Welcome back to part 3 of the series. In this video I'm going to go through 6x6 square shooting cameras. We're going to compare some TLRs to some system cameras, a little bit of rangefinder action at the end. Basically, this video should help you choose which 6x6 camera is right for you based on a few different criteria. Obviously price is an important one, but also quality and specialization. Now some cameras are better for different things. TLRs are great inconspicuous cameras out in the streets, but Hasselblads are much more conspicuous. But if you're going out and you're traveling, then maybe you want the Mamiya rangefinders. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the system cameras. So we've got the king of 6x6 is probably the Hasselblad 500 series. Now they are the beautiful chrome Swedish. They're the very classic cameras. You'll have definitely seen them before. I'm sure if you've clicked on this video, you know what they are. Now the best Hasselblads to go for are probably the 501 or the 500C/M. There are earlier 500Cs, but the important bit when you're buying these is that they have the AccuMatte, the higher quality focusing screen. Now it's not just a low light thing. These will help you in all lighting conditions. So that's something you should really look at if you're thinking of buying a Hasselblad. The accessories and the lenses, they're great, but they are very expensive. There's a bit of a premium on the Hasselblad brand. So if you wanted to buy a 3-lens kit, you have to spend a little bit more. I know that some of the 50mm for the Hasselblad can go up to about £800, and although the portrait lenses are a bit cheaper, they'll still cost you a decent 300, 400. So keep that in mind. Another thing that people say when they're talking about buying Hasselblads is that you have to make sure that the back has the same serial number as its insert, because there is a very high degree of tolerance in the Hasselblad system. So if people start to mismatch equipment, it can lead to it can jam, or your focus plane can be off. So make sure that you keep an eye on your serial numbers. The eBay buyers will often have matching back in the description, just because that is something people look out for. You can save a bit of money if you're set on a Hasselblad, but you're not set on the price. You can save a bit of money by going for one of the later models that has a built-in winder. Now they do look a bit funny, but they can sell for £300 or £400 less than a comparable 500 series body without the winder. Yeah, it's not quite the same, but if you're set on a Hasselblad and don't want to spend all that money, save a bit, get a nicer lens. The lenses are all superb. They're all made by Carl Zeiss, and they're kind of famous for being sort of the best of the medium format group. They're the ones that went into space with NASA, so the Apollo missions used them. How bad can they be? You've all seen the pictures from space. Yeah, if they were before the 90s, they're all Hasselblad. Yeah, if you don't want to buy a Hasselblad, you can go for something else, which is the Bronica SQ. Now it's a little bit sort of angular and plastic looking. They're great, they're just not quite the same sort of mechanical marvel that the Hasselblads are. They weigh about the same, but they're just a little bit chunkier, and if the form factor of it doesn't really bother you, these can go for about £300. So get one of those, and the lenses are 150 to 200 tops. So you're getting a much cheaper system with a very small reduction in quality. Actually, another step down from the SQA would be something like the Kiev 88. Now these are straight up Eastern European clones of the 500. So if you get one of these, you're getting a similar looking package with dodgy, poorly machined sort of internals. They used to have a reputation for being incredibly unreliable because they didn't really have any quality control when they left the factory. But in my opinion, it's been so long since they were produced that the ones that were dodgy and came off the production line long, they're all in bins. So there's a bit of survivorship bias. If you find a Kiev 88 that someone's been using up until 2015, it was probably one of the ones that fluked through the minefield of the production line and came out with good stuff. The lenses aren't as good, but you can get a Kiev 88 for £150. They really aren't very expensive, but yeah, they're a little bit worse. Another interesting sort of system camera, not quite the same as the previous three, which all shared that kind of boxy lengthways structure, is the Pentacon 6. Now this is a very strange looking camera. It's essentially a beefed up SLR. So what they've done is they've taken your 36 by 24 millimeter film area and they've just expanded it up to 6 by 6. It's a lot taller than your average SLR, and it weighs a bit more as well. You can get these in two versions. You can have them where you look down through a waist level viewfinder. If you haven't seen one of those, check out the previous video. And you can also get ones that have attached prisms that sit on top, and that's what the one in the picture has. That really makes it incredibly similar to your average film SLR. I've got a Canon AE1 here, and it has all the same controls. So you'll have an aperture ring on the lens where you select your aperture, and then you'll have a shutter speed dial on the top. And you even advance your film the same way. You're just bringing it across the back. Now, the Pentacon 6 has a pretty good reputation. The lenses are meant to be a lot better than the price point might make you think. So I wouldn't write them off as being funny Eastern European knockoffs. They're actually pretty good. That's if you can get one in good condition, because they're a little bit rarer these days. So that's the sort of system cameras, the modular ones. The next section is going to be TLRs, or twin lens reflexes. If you haven't seen a TLR before, they are quite strange looking. They're kind of the ones, if you see old-timey press packs, when they all have the flashes and the two lens cameras. I've used them before, and people just seem quite confused by them. But essentially what you have are two lenses, one at the top which gives you your ground glass viewfinder and your kind of lens for composing and just looking out the front. The other lens contains the film door behind it and the shutter in the lens. They're all leaf shutters. So essentially you get everything ready with the top lens and then you take the picture with the bottom one. Now obviously there's a little bit of inaccuracy there. So when you're using TLRs and there's something important at the top of your frame, it's a good idea to leave a little bit of space, because you see one picture and then you take the other picture slightly below it. The Rolleiflexes can actually be attached to prism finders, and you can use those at eye level, but it really defeats the point of the system to be adding that bulk and to using it like an SLR. I'd recommend, for example, the Pentacon 6 with the prism if you want something you can use at eye level. But the Rolleiflexes in particular are famous for having absolutely fantastic lenses. They are all mechanical, so they do lack the light meter, but they're beautiful to look at and they take fantastic pictures. There are two versions of the Rolleiflex lens systems. You can get a 2.8 lens. It's a little bit faster, but a lot more expensive. To get a 2.8 in good condition, you're probably going to pay above £1,000. If you don't need the speed, or you want to go for a slightly cheaper option, there are the Rollei 3.5s, and they cost a good £400, £500 less. So if you go for one of those, you can save a bit of money and spend it all on film. So that's not a bad idea. In fact, if you don't want to go for the Rolleiflex, you could go for the Yashica mats. So there are two Yashica mats. There's the Yashica mat 124, and then there's the 124G. They're really similar. I'll put them both up. The silver one is the non-G, and the silver one goes for as low as £120. There's one on sale in London I saw a couple of days ago, so if you're quick, maybe you can get that one. There's aperture, by the way. I probably should tell you where it is. There's a 124G. There are some upgrades in the 124G. They took the chrome off, and I think that you just have a slightly smoother wind-on system, and a little bit of there's a little sticker on the side that you can slide around to show what film you've got loaded. I wouldn't draw too much of a distinction between them, because although the G's sell for more, apparently they're not as well made as the previous ones. Apparently even the lens is not as good on the later ones. So if you find a Yashica mat and it's £100, I'd go for that because one, they're just on the cusp of shooting up in price, and two, they are 90% as good as a Rollei Flex, and they're cheap, so they're good. You can't, if one breaks on you, you're only £100 out, but if a Rollei Flex breaks, you're going to have to send it off, they're going to have repairmen. CLAs, it costs hundreds of pounds. That's not it for the TLRs. The other relevant TLR is the Mamiya C220 or 330 range. Now, if you need interchangeable lenses on a TLR, you can't just unscrew the bottom lens and put the new lens in, because what you'd actually do is change your perspective wildly compared to the one above it. Your focus would be off, it would all just not work. So all the Rollei Flexes, Yashicas, every TLR essentially, except the Mamiya C220 and 330 have fixed lenses. So when you buy your TLR, you normally get an 80mm or a 75mm lens, and that's it. You can't change that. If you buy the C220 or 330, you can remove the entire front plate of the camera. There's a little catch on the side, it all comes off, and you can install another lens panel on it, and that gives you both your top lens and your bottom lens, and they're focus calibrated. So if you're someone who loves the idea of a TLR, but for the fact you can't change the lenses, the Mamiya is the one for you. Now, that's a fair few cameras to go through. There is one more contender in the 6x6 cam, which is the Mamiya 6. Now this is a rangefinder. It's very similar to the Fuji and Bronica rangefinders in the previous video, but it's very highly regarded. It's got an absolutely fantastic lens selection for it. They are quite expensive now. Mamiya rangefinders are really up on the kind of film trend. So they're going for over £1,000, maybe £1,500 if you get a very good model. But they are pretty small. They rival the Yashicas for weight. So they're quite a big negative and quite a small package. But if you can get a hold of one for anything under £1,000, it is absolutely fantastic, and that's the one I'd recommend. It's a little bit faster for composing than the TLRs are, and the other advantage is that you don't get that sort of forced low perspective that you do with a lot of the waist level finders. You can use that at eye level, and if you want, you can focus it at eye level and then move it down and just sort of frame it as you like, rather than being forced lower. Yeah, I would say that the best of the bunch for value is either the Bronica SQ or the Yashica mats. That is a distinction between whether you want a TLR or a system camera, and that's up to the usage you intend for it. If you're going to place it in a studio, then I would go for the system camera every time, but the Rolleis and the TLRs, they've also been used in studios. Richard Avedon is famous for using both large format and also Rollei Flex cameras. Yeah, it's all up to choosing. Once you've chosen your format, if you've clicked on this video, I'm assuming that you're a fan of 6x6. You've got to choose between system camera and TLR, and the Mamiya's, he's out on his own. And if you want the best system camera, it's the Hasselblad 500. If you want the best TLR, it's the Rollei Flex 2.8. And if you want the best value system camera, it's the Bronica SQ. If you want the best value TLR, it's the Yashica Mat 124G. And neither of those none of those full cameras will give you any sort of grief. They're all great. And I guess the choice is up to you. I mean, 6x6 is a very interesting format, so I commend you for choosing it and getting this far, because it is a bit of a weird one. I'll put up the comparison between the 6x6 and the 35mm frame here. So if you're not fully comfortable with squares, you can definitely crop quite a lot of rectangular space out of that. So that could have some sway. I know that particularly waist level finders and 6x6 can give quite a stereotypical look, and you kind of have to break out of that if you want a more interesting composition. But if you can handle squares and you want to shoot some 120 film, then choose one of these cameras and you can't go too far wrong. That was quite a long video to do in essentially one take, so thank you for sticking with it. If you're interested in the 6x7 cameras, that will be the next video. There's a link here, and yeah, thanks for watching.